Hello and welcome to day 22 of the Red Letter Revolution. And today we're going to be talking about resurrection appearances of Jesus Christ in John chapter 20, verses 15 to 29. And we're almost done. So let's see. 20, 15 to 29. All right. So Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" She, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him, "Rabboni," which is to say, teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father or Creator, but go to my brethren and say to them, I am ascending to my Creator and your Creator, and to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things to her. Then, the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in the midst and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. So Jesus said to them again, "Peace be to you. As the Father has sent me, or the Creator has sent me, I also send you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." Now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, "We have seen the Lord." So he said to them, Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." And after 8 days, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas with him. Then Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst and said, "Peace be to you." Then he said to Thomas, "Reach your finger here and look at my hands, and reach your hand here and put them into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believing." And Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Sweet. So in this section, some of the things that I think are of note is that Mary is the first one to see Jesus. And if you pay attention to the trajectory of the stories, the women are always the first. Like when Jesus first told who he was, when everybody kept saying, "Are you the one? Are you the one?" He never said anything until he was talking to the woman at the well. Then she's like, "Oh, one day the Messiah is going to come and he's going to reveal everything." And she was like, he was like, "Oh, I'm that guy." So for some reason, Jesus felt comfortable telling women the truth and showing up for women first. And that's a big deal given the time that he was living in, and the different things. Like, people literally underestimate Jesus's relationship with women. Even Mary and Martha, his relationship with his mom, and I'm talking about the other Mary. Everybody seemed to be named Mary except for Martha, who also started with M-A-R. At any rate, that's beside the point. The main thing is that Jesus' relationship and engagement with women far exceeded the norm and was scandalous in a lot of ways in his time. And I think that Jesus' nature is the same now. The Christ nature is the same now. And I told you before that the spirit of the spirit of life, or life itself, that name Zoe, is the life that Jesus lived, is feminine. And so maybe it's not so strange. Also, it's interesting that he breathed on them and gave them the Holy Spirit, according to this passage. And a lot of people don't realize that the word for spirit is the same word for breath. And so when he breathed on them, the spirit, those are the same words. Like you said, respiration and spirit, those are the same root words. Or just like conspiracy, that just means to breathe with. So breath and spirit have a deep relationship in the Bible and in general. Even in the Genesis, it says that God breathed into Adam and Eve, and they became living beings. So breath and spirit and life are always connected to one another. So that's, I think, also of note. And then when he ended up finally coming to the disciples and showing himself to them, it says they were scared. So they were in the house scared. Mary was out in the open. So that shows you something too. And then Thomas was, I'm doubting. I'm not going to believe unless I see proof. And then Jesus shows up and proves it to him and says, put your fingers here and, see that I'm real and that sort of thing. But I'm not trying to down men per se, but what I'm trying to reveal is there's an expressed nature in the scriptures of women having faith, not being afraid, going forward first, and somehow, some way, we have used these teachings to be super misogynistic when Christ was not that way, apparently. And so I think that's important to note. And I know that's not the typical focus when you talk about resurrection experiences or resurrection appearances, but I think is worthy to note. And the last thing I think I'll lift up is that Jesus said to Thomas, you believe, you've seen me and you believe. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed, which would be all of us. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make that much sense for us to believe in a story from a long time ago when we have so many examples of people who say they follow these teachings who have done a horrible job. But somehow we still believe it. And myself, as a very logical person, I think I believe, me believing is a miracle at this stage. But I do believe because there's some truth that maybe rides on the life that's within the spirit, the breath. Is something about it that just, for me, rings true because of the life that I've lived and the life that I've tried to understand what is true. And I've questioned these things. I've doubted. I've read. I've come from a tradition where it's like every word is literal. And I've come to understand that there's different things that people believe that it only, it's more recent in history. Some of these, like the inerrancy of the Bible, was not something that people believed a long time ago when they were writing these things and putting it together. They had a different relationship to things like myth and all those things that we don't have. And even it wasn't until the 60s in Chicago that this biblical inerrancy thing kind of got like, bam, we believe this way. So there's so many things that inform how people experience the scriptures that really take from the scriptures and reduce it to some kind of like instruction book. Like I know I was taught that Bible stood for basic instructions before leaving earth. And that's kind of silly. It's a good use of an acronym, but it's very silly because it doesn't, if it was basic instructions, people might be could follow it and live it, but it's deeper than that because people have things that we contend with. We have fear. We have error that some people call sin that distracts us. We have like carnal desires and all these things like that. And I think that what Jesus does is he doesn't escape any of them. He faces all of them, even the family complications and all of that stuff. But he still keeps going toward what he knows is love and what he knows is truth. And it's revealed in the person, if you will, of Jesus. And I think that we have each tasted something of that in our lives, or we wouldn't still try to make sense of this, especially in the progressive church where people aren't thinking like that this is going to keep them from hell. They're not like afraid of hell and like, oh, let me follow more else. It's a whole different relationship in this space, because here we're trying to understand so we can put it into practice and live it and not be hypocrites. And it's not transactional. Like the way that it's been taught a lot of times is transactional. You do this and you get this reward. But when you're doing it from a place of relational depth and allowing yourself to be transformed and renewed so that you can be a better person in the world, but you're not doing it for the reward. The reward is your heart changing. And I think that when we read these things, when we read these teachings, and we see the nuances and the other things, the complexities, it just shows us how to live more deeply in those things in our lives. So that was a lot. Thank you for participating and listening, and look forward to our last couple of days in the Red Letter Revolution. And I hope you're experiencing it as some kind of revolution of getting to know Jesus in a new way and reflecting on Jesus in a new way and the scriptures in a new way. So thanks.